So here we are with Sophie No Joke Luxton. How are we doing?
I'm really good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, good. I always start those things with my man, but I can't really say that anymore. So, how's lockdown treating you? How's training going?
It's all right, you know. I'm doing the best with what I can, making the most of the situation. I just finished one session. Um, yeah, I'll probably do another one after this. I've just done some pads. Just been doing what I can with the people that are around me as well. Making the most of it.
So, regards of what you're doing now, is that like programmed by your coach at all? Is this something you're doing independently? Have you got any kind of structure whilst you're in off season, quote unquote?
I have structured it out a bit just because if I just free ball it and just wake up every day and I haven't planned it out, then it'll all just go to pot. Like I even when I'm training, usually I have to have a routine, and I usually do like the same things on the same day, you know, each week. I've taken advice off, you know, what other people are doing and my coaches and stuff. But yeah, it's just the most important thing to me is just to try and keep my fitness up and keep moving. So when we come back, I can relatively just step back onto the mat and be in as best condition as possible.
Well, this is it. Well, let's turn the clock back. How come you got started in MMA in the first place? What was your like background and stuff?
I don't really have one of those really interesting like why I started MMA stories. I kind of just turned up at a gym because I had nothing better to do, and just started kickboxing. That was about 7 years ago now, I think, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I started kickboxing, and I never had any intentions to fight. But I picked it up quite quickly. I've always been really sporty and athletic. You know, always done sports and things. And then after a while of going, my coach kept saying to me, "Oh, you need to come sparring." And I used to go sparring every week. And I'm pretty sure I used to turn up and I just used to run away from everyone. And he kept saying to me, "No, keep coming back." And eventually I got my confidence with it. I think about 6 months later, I had a kickboxing fight. And I won in like a minute, I think. And then I was addicted then. I kept going. And then I think I had a few fights like kickboxing. I did like some fights like kickboxing and wrestling. And then I think I had my first MMA fight when I was 15. So yeah, quite young.
So let's break down a lot of that. So let's go into was this at Russell Perks? Was it somewhere else?
No. So yeah, I've been a bit of a gym gypsy, to be honest. I'm
Gym
settled
gypsy.
now. No, my first gym I was at was Impact Combat and Fitness in Lutterworth, so near
Shout out.
Leicester. Yeah. So that's where I started. I was there for about maybe 4 or 5 years, I would say. I had like my first 4 or 5 MMA fights there. Yeah, I built some really good foundations there. They got a really good striking. It's like a good striking base. So I got, you know, I always say to everybody, you know, I'm grateful for going there because I built a lot of the fundamentals of my striking. Obviously, I'm more, you know, known for my striking when I fight and stuff. So yeah, so I started there, had a few fights there, and then I relocated. So I moved to Russ's. I think I was there for around about a year before I moved here to Birmingham.
So that was an interesting transition in itself. So let's go through a bit of this. Obviously, I'm going to jump around timelines because, you know, my podcast, my rules. So, so talk me through the initial going into kickboxing in the first place. Was it mainly guys? Was it mixed? What was that like in the first place?
When I started fighting, I think there was only really me and there was one other girl at my gym, and she did kickboxing as well. And we were about the same size actually, so it was quite good. We used to partner each other a lot and things, and there was a few other people around about my size. But no, something I always talk about when people talk about women in the sport now is when I first started MMA, no women were really doing it at all. And I remember seeing the MMA classes and jiu-jitsu and stuff and saying like, "Oh, I really want to do that." And I always used to get like, at first it was like, "Well, girls don't do this. You can't come in here." And none of the guys ever actually wanted to train with me at first or grapple. You know, it was a bit like, no, you know, we can't be rolling on the floor with a girl. So I was allowed to go as long as I took a girl with me, and I had to stay with the girl, you know, for the class. And then after about 2 months, they all got over themselves, and they let me join in, you know, with them. And no, but it's nice now that girls can just turn up at a gym and just walk into the class, and just get stuck in, because it wasn't really like that when I first started.
Well, this is part of the evolution of the sport as well. It's not necessarily just the facilities in themselves, it's people's approach to it all. Because a lot of people, even still now, aren't that comfortable with sparring with girls just based off of, you know, you're sort of raised not to punch girls in the face as a rule. You know, as a general rule of thumb, I think it's a good way to sort of live your life. So when it comes to, you know, a girl's there, padded up, ready to spar, and you're like, okay, hit me. And you're just a bit like, it's sort of, I don't know, there's an element of, you know, the sportsmanship, and there's also the conflict of your natural, I don't know, your norms and values and stuff. But again, I've been beaten up by enough girls to know that's not the case. So.
I think most female MMA fighters would agree. You know, I think I'm not sure if Molly brought this up when she was on your podcast, but she's definitely spoken about it before. How there's really like two types of guys when you spar. There's the ones who don't really want to hit you, and there's the ones that will hit you hard because they don't want you to win. If you know what I mean, like. Yeah. And I always find it really entertaining when people don't know me. Like, if I go to a new gym, people usually won't know that I've had fights and things before. And it's entertaining. You know, you see the surprise on their face when they think that you're going to be absolutely rubbish and not. You
start spinning everything else.
And then you punch them in the face, and they're like, you see the realization in their face that now, you know, I do actually have to try. But yeah, I'm quite lucky. Like, you know, our team, it's really good. People are really good with me. Like, majority of people, I always see it like, I don't want people to give me stuff just because I'm smaller than them. But if I'm doing all the technique right, and, you know, and it would be realistic if I was with someone my own size that I would get it, then they would give it me. I think that's like a good way to do it. But yeah, often guys, either they don't want to spar you because you're a girl, or they want to prove a point, so they'll kind of try and knock you down a peg.
So let's talk outside of the gym for a bit. So say being athletic in the first place, but then you go into combat sports. What was your friendship group like about that? Did they give you any sort of any sort of resistance on that? Did they say, oh no, don't do that, or any sort of, you know, like a better word?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like, when I was at school, I was training and fighting. Like when I was at high school, when I was doing my GCSEs and everything, I was training and fighting. I didn't spend no time. For.
Pushback.
And I'm like, I didn't really like. You know, to be honest, I didn't really have any friends at school. Like, because I was doing my GCSEs, my parents used to say to me, like, you still need to do your revision and stuff. So I would use all my free like periods at school, all my lunch times. I would do all my work and revision in that time, so that when I'd finished school, I could go straight to training and I could train for 3 hours. So, and I didn't do any of the social things that people usually did at school. Like, I never went to parties. I didn't go to prom, because I wanted to go training.
That is crazy, that kind of discipline at that age as well, because you get all these like natural distractions and everything else. Did you ever feel like, I don't know, like, you know, when you have the sort of lulls of training, like you get the sort of, I don't know, peaks and troughs of it. Do you ever feel like, oh, you missed out on those things? Or was it always you're happy with your decisions you made at that time?
Not really. I don't really ever feel like I missed out on anything, because, to be honest, like, I didn't really go, like, I might have not gone to prom, and I might have not, like, done a lot of, like, I never really did the whole go to uni and go clubbing thing or nothing like that, but I've achieved more than most people my age, way more, to be honest, just not even in fighting, just generally in life. So I don't really feel like I've missed out. I feel like I'm more satisfied with what I'm getting out of my life than if I think I'd done that.
I think that's a really important answer you've given there. is that fulfillment and that kind of like general satisfaction. Because when people going through obviously like natural progression through school, you're sort of finding yourself, you're finding what you like, and the temptation's always there to go into the crowd to sort of fit the mold a little bit. But to hear that you've basically pushed back against that and done something you genuinely wanted to do instead of going through those motions, and now be able to reflect on that and still feel that level of satisfaction is just so important, because it's so easy just to be like, okay, if I play football with these people, even if I don't really like it that much, I'll be part of the group and that'll be safe and easy. Whereas you've gone, do you know what? This is what's more important to me, and you've actually stuck with it as well. So it takes a lot.
Yeah, I think there's been I think it's, especially with girls as well, I think there are, there's distractions for everyone in the sport, but I think there are a lot of distractions for women in the sport, even, like having children and stuff, starting a family, a lot of women have like strong maternal and stuff. So like starting a family to them is really important and things. So I think there can be distractions. Obviously, like there's some people who will have their family and then carry on fighting, but yeah, I know there's girls that I've fought, and even girls that have beat me, and then they've not carried on with the sport, and I just think, how, it was such a shame for that, they were so good, and it's such a shame for them to have, changed their path in life. But I guess if they're happy then with what they're doing.
Now, regards of like weight cutting and everything else, obviously for girls it's much more complicated because of hormones and other bits and bobs. I'm not going to pretend I know science and stuff. I'm just going to generalize like that. So how were your weight cuts throughout competing? Like, did you ever do sizable cuts? Or they were fairly tame? How was your usual weight management?
So like, this is a strange one, because for most people when they start a sport, they lose weight. When I started this sport, I think I was like walking around at about 50 kilos. And I used to just fight at my weight and stuff. Like kickboxing, it's more laid back, when I was doing kickboxing, you just kind of used to turn up at your weight and get in there. But no, when I started doing MMA, I was fighting at straw weight. But I knew nothing about nutrition, and, it was just, I just used to my nutrition was terrible. And I had, my first few fights, I had terrible cuts. Like I used to, even when I got a bit bigger, I think when I got to about walking around at about bantamweight, my last fight that I had at 52, I just cut it all in fat. I cut from 61 to 52 in fat, and I'm not relatively high body fat at bantamweight anyway. And I was just so weak. Like I even see photos from when I'm getting my hands wrapped in the way into the fight, and my arms at the top are as thin as my wrists. It's really bad. But I knew nothing about nutrition, and I just it wasn't very good. And to be honest, the reason why I went up to flyweight is because that last cut to strawweight messed my hormones up, and it it made me ill. So I decided I'm going to move up to flyweight. So I moved up, and to be honest, I don't even now, in my opinion, I don't struggle to make flyweight. Obviously, some people might consider this cut hard, but it might, it's not.
Manageable.
I don't really, I don't really struggle at all. Like last year, I had fights at all different weights. I think I fought at bantamweight, flyweight, everywhere in between. But no, I'm actually I'm dropping back to strawweight when I come back.
Not exclusive.
I'm looking forward to it though. I know a lot more about nutrition now. I've learned a lot off Mr. Sport. I spoke to him about it last year. I said, do you think it's an option for me? And he said, yeah, definitely. I'm not strict when I go to flyweight. I can cut to flyweight in fat if I wanted to and get really lean. But I think my last fight at flyweight, I think I sweat 2 kilos easily. So yeah, I'm going to be dropping back to straw. I think it's going to be really good for me there.
Let me break down something you've just said there. I'm so curious. You say I'm not that strict. What does not that strict mean? Go on. What are the treat meals? Talk to me.
Oh, God.
Is it Krispy Kremes between pad sessions or what's
I don't know. I'm just, I'm honest. Like, I mean, my last fight, I didn't even fight flyweight. I fought we had a 60-kilo catch weight. I know my opponent, she wasn't very well. A few weeks before the fight, so her management said, we don't want to cut in the weight, which, in hindsight, like, I would have preferred to fight at 57. But, it's all, a fight, it's experience. I don't regret taking the fight, although she was bigger than me in there, but, I don't really regret taking it. I still enjoyed myself, but no, like, to be honest, usually when I cut to 57, like when I cut for my title fight, obviously I had to be on the dot, but I think I only started really, really like cutting my foods like 2-3 weeks out. When I say that, I mean I was having McDonald's 2-3 weeks out.
There we go. This is what I was trying to get out of you. I wanted to hear what the Big Macs between sparring sessions. This is it. Here we go.
I don't have a Big Mac, no. I just get like chicken selects.
What is your sauce? Go on. This is what people want to know. Sort of
Sweet chili.
There we go.
Sweet
That's
chili.
what we want. We got all their lines now. Sweet chili and straw weights. There we go.
I have to go to strawweight now. I've just told everybody that. Everyone's going to be shaking their heads at me.
Well, it's the best McDonald's is shut as well. Otherwise, you might have some issues with that. So, regards of the transition to MMA in the first place, so I'm going to keep jumping around again. My podcast, my rules. So, you've gone to do kickboxing. You're having some fights there. What made you want to steer away from kickboxing? What was it? How did you get into MMA from there?
Well, I think it was half that, there was other people at the gym doing it. And I've always just loved sports. Like, even when I was at school, I think I played on just about every single sports team. I have to say, not that I'm very good at team sports because I'm too competitive. I start fighting with my own teammates and everything. But I've always done sports. I did trampolining for 8 years. I did gymnastics, like track and field. I did for a while. Football, literally everything, every sport. I've probably done it. But I just love sports, so I saw, jiu-jitsu and wrestling and stuff, and I wanted to try it. But also, like, kind of the time when I got into MMA was like the Ronda Rousey, taking over the world.
Girl power era.
Yeah, as much as she's not my favourite, like, female fighter.
Ooh, controversy, go on.
She did do a lot for the sport, and she did encourage me as a female to get into the sport. I thought it was, I was like, whoa, there's a girl doing this, and everybody's actually interested in her. Yeah, when I started, like, they always used to just throw the girls' fight at the beginning of the card. No one used to watch. So it was nice to see that people are taking an interest in a female fighter.
Well, that is a huge part of the development in the sport. And what people seem to underappreciate is, although at the smaller weights you don't seem to get the same sort of, devastating knockouts, but what you do see is because of how you have to train being smaller and weaker, and the fact you have to be more technical, you have to make sure what you're doing is properly. So when you get these sort of even weight matchups at the lower weights, it's always much more technical. And the actual performance is always, a lot cleaner than it is at the higher weights as a rule normally.
Yeah, I actually don't really like watching the heavy guys fight. Most of my favourite fighters are like light fighters. I find it way more entertaining. I don't really care about watching a massive guy knock another massive guy out. Obviously, I appreciate everyone in the sport, but for me, I'd rather watch the small guys. They are more technical and it's quicker pace.
Oh, 100%.
More tends to happen in that short amount of time.
So one thing I wanted to really get onto is your transition from Russell Perks to Renegade. So what really inspired that sort of transition?
There was a few things really. I started commuting to train at Renegade. I think I was commuting maybe 4 or 5 days a week to train there. And with me, more than anything, skill level wise at a gym or whatever, it's about me clicking with a team, especially when you're a girl. You've got to have trust in the people you're training with. And something that's really important for me is having belief in, like, my coaches and things. And and it's nothing bad against Russes, but it's just me personally. I really clicked at Renegade. Just as a person, I clicked with the people there. And I think I had one fight. My first fight I had where I was kind of really training with the guys was September last year. I fought on Golden Ticket, and I won in less than a minute. You could see a huge difference between that and my previous fight, which I actually lost on Golden Ticket. Just in my composure, my style, everything, and in that fight I kind of realised all the improvements I've made, and I thought, I'm gonna have to if I want to take this seriously, for me, I'm gonna have to move there. So I moved to Birmingham on my own. I live here now, train here, and it's great. That I just really enjoy training there.
So I want to go through a few sort of points on that. So one thing is this whole issue of changing sort of gyms. It can always come across that it's got to be on bad terms, there's got to be drama and all this kind of stuff. But no, you can have these kind of clean breaks. And this is like, I had Ross on a couple of days ago. Absolutely sound bloke. A lot of time for him. And again, I think if you could explain that kind of thing to him, I doubt he'd ever take that kind of offence to it. Because I'm speaking on behalf of him, but it's that kind of clean cut of, you need to find these people that you work best with. Because I've been around different gyms. I'm a gym gypsy in your words, for lack of a better choice of words. But you need that, because when you're in this kind of sport, you need to find the best sort of fit for you. And just because you're comfortable doesn't mean you're in the best place. And again, it takes a lot to, progress, but also takes a lot to then, spend most of your GCSE time training on top of that and making that work. So that same kind of, you know what your priority is at the end of the day. So there's that thing I wanted to really get out of. You can leave a gym and change gyms without the sort of bad blood. It doesn't need to have that kind of, he said, she said kind of conversations. So that was the first thing I really wanted the system really highlight to anyone listening who feels the need to change their gyms or is feeling, I don't know, unsettled about a move. Because, it's time to put the world to rights. Because you can't.
I lost you for a second there.
It's all good. I'm just putting the world to rights, so it's fine. And yeah, the next point as well with regards of training in Birmingham then. So what was, without the intricacies of the techniques and everything else, what part of your game you felt changed from going over there? Like, regards of, I don't know, how did it transfer into your fights? If you see what I mean.
I think one thing you can really see from my fights a year ago between my most recent fights is kind of like my composure when I'm fighting. So I was always really known for, like, when I used to fight, I would just go forward, and basically my defense was just not getting knocked out. And I just used to, like, hope that my chin was strong enough to get me through the fight, and then if it was, then I'll be fine. And it did work. I never got knocked out, but
touch wood.
Now really learning to when the right moment is to go forward and when it's the right moment is to take a pause. Just like cagecraft type things. My wrestling's come on a lot since I've been there, and my grappling as well. But I really think, my striking, it was great before I went there, but now it's just, I just feel so comfortable all the time when I'm striking. I feel comfortable in all areas, but I think it shows in my fights that there's not really many people who are going to be able to compete on my level of striking.
So I want to go into a few things of this as well. So what I tend to find with training with more professionals is that kind of composure you learn to develop. That kind of, not the need to rush in for certain things. But in the same breath, it can almost, I don't know, affect your urgency. So it's a tricky one. It's good that you've managed to take that kind of composure while retaining your urgency, if you see what I mean. Because it's so easy to sort of, always wait for an opportunity instead of, creating that one. And on top of that as well is, we'll break down a few of these sort of things. So talk to me about your first sort of loss in MMA and how you sort of dealt with that. Like, because when you're going into these fights, obviously you're going in there heart on your sleeve. This is your honest performance. So we've got to talk about the most recent one against Lexi. Obviously you said about the whole weight cutting thing. How did you feel after that? The fight itself.
Obviously straight straight after the fight, I was, you know, the thing is for me, obviously everybody handles, you know, losses in different ways. The thing is for me, I know, obviously I've had losses, and just even generally in life, however I cope with something, I just let it out. So I remember it was my first loss since I'd been at Renegade, so I don't really think that people straight away knew how I was gonna react, and I just cry, like, and it's not even like a nice cry. It's,
Don't we all?
like that, like that cry that
Ugly cry.
makes you want to cry because someone's like wailing, and I'm in the back, and I just go for it, and I'm.
Do you snot a lot when you cry? Or are you one of those?
I don't. I just literally like you know, like I'm crying so much, I'm like choking, and I just let it out because that's just how I deal with things. I know that I'll be fine. I just let it out. So I cried for a while, and then I had to come back home from. It was in Liverpool, so drove myself home, which isn't always the best thing, but no, obviously at first I was gutted, but you know, the more time goes on, the more you kind of come to terms with it, and you know, there was a lot of positives from that fight. In all of my fights, whether I win or lose, obviously I always learn things, but I always take one scenario that I know I will never do in another fight. Even when I win fights, I always take one thing, and it always sticks in my head. That, you know, that if I'm ever in that scenario again, it comes back to me, and I'm like, you know, you can't do that again. You've got to, you know, I always work on it. Or my first fight actually was a loss. I think I lost my first two fights. Definitely. Yeah, I lost my first two MMA fights actually. But yeah, I'm rambling. Back to my
feel free to ramble and stuff. Keep going. So your first two losses, go on. So what was that like?
But back to my first fight, I lost terribly.
Go on.
Really badly. Like, I wasn't at all ready for my first fight. But to be honest, I always say I don't think I would ever have been ready for my first fight. So I'm not all that mad that I lost it. And I lost it bad. I got subbed, guillotine, and that was actually quite interesting because me and that girl, we fought 3 times. The first fight I won. This wasn't an MMA fight though; it was like striking with takedowns. The second fight I lost, and then we actually had a rubber match. And then she won again actually, but it went to decision, and that was actually one of my favourite fights. That was my last fight at strawweight. That was on WFC. They don't run that anymore, but it was actually quite a good show. Yeah, so my first 2 were losses, but my first loss was one of my most important fights because leading up to that fight, I had no good mental game at all. I was literally just picturing all the potential ways that I could lose, like thinking, like worrying about making sure, like I need to make sure I don't lose this way. I need to make sure I don't lose this way. And then after that fight, I had a bit of time off. I had a shoulder injury, and then the whole camp leading up to when we fought the 3rd time, I even just remember I used to just always be imagining in my head winning, and I remember I would do my running because I struggled to make the weight that time. I remember I was running a lot, and I remember I'd always be running on the treadmill, and there was a mirror in front of the treadmill, and I'd be running, and I'd be like talking to myself in the mirror, and I'd be like running with my hands in the air, and I was literally just having to picture every way that I could win the fight. And my performance was 10 times better in my second fight than my first fight, and it really just shows how your mentality just changes everything completely.
When you had that first fight booked, did you feel a pressure to then perform in that? Because obviously you've had your kickbox and everything else and your amount of collective years training. Did you put like additional pressure on yourself before you even stepped in there?
Not at all, really. To be honest, even now, all of my fights I've ever had, I don't get nervous. Even before the fight, I don't get nervous at all. I'm just always excited. I know I'm going to have fun when I'm in there, even when I don't win, even when I get choked out in the second round. I still had fun. And even when there is pressure, I always feel like I do better. I don't really suffer negatively with pressure. Yeah, I just felt excited that I was doing it, because as well, I struggled to get matchups. That's why we fought 3 times, because no girls fought. So I was just happy that I was actually getting to fight. I was doing it.
Well, this is it, because like the girls in my gym as well, they struggle to find matchups most of the time because they only fight so many people, especially like jiu-jitsu comps as well. They end up having like maybe 2 or 3 people in their bracket, including each other normally. So it's always a bit of a tricky one. So talk to me about. Sorry,
I think you've got one girl at your gym that I want to fight actually.
Go on.
But I don't know what weight she fights at. But when I drop to strawweight, I want to fight Hayley.
Ooh.
No, just because she's been doing it a long time as well, I appreciate her skills, and I actually think it would be a really good fight. It would be the classic striker versus grappler, but because I know she likes her jiu-jitsu, so.
Well, this will be quite an interesting one. I'm not sure about the weight-wise, but stylistically it'd be a good one. And if you've seen like Hayley fight as well, her striking really comes on as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be a good match to see. I mean, even for just sparring and nothing else, to see you two proper go for it. It'd be interesting to see how you guys go up against each other. And this is it. The thing what I find really, I don't know, it's got a tricky one. When you respect someone and think it'd be a good fight, it's hard to ask to fight them out sounding disrespectful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not like, it's not like, I'm not really the type of person to go around being like, I want to fight you, and you, but you've got to be like that, to be honest with us girls. Like, most of my fights I go to the promoter and I say, or my management goes to the promoter and says, right, I want to fight on this this card. And then I send them a list of names, because I know the chances are that they're not going to get another girl, just coincidentally say, yeah, I want to fight. So I send them a list of names, and then usually they just contact them all and say, do you want to fight?
So the Lexi Rook fight then, was that like for the Vigor 8 belt or something like that?
We was actually meant to fight definitely once, maybe twice before it actually happened. So we were originally supposed to fight on Golden Ticket, and I can't remember what. Oh, yeah, that was it. So we meant to fight on Golden Ticket, and she broke her foot, I think. And then I think that I don't think it was set in stone, but I think there was talks of us fighting again when I got my belt on Golden Ticket. But I think she was going to IMMA, so she couldn't take the fight.
But that is a question I wanted to get onto as well, because obviously you're wanting to go pro after what's going on. But would you not consider doing IMMAF before you go pro?
To be honest, I'm not looking to go pro straight away. Obviously, this has all changed everybody's plans, but I do want to have a few more fights. Obviously, I'm going to be moving to strawweight, so I want to have a good few fights at that weight. But yeah, I do want to do IMMAF. There's just a few things for me, obviously. The first one is, I don't know what they're doing about it now, but they're talking about bringing in some grading system that you have to grade in MMA before you can enter IMMAF. And I just can't imagine, my gym is never going to do it. I can't imagine most gyms wanting to do that. I think they're reviewing it again, because I think there's been a lot of people pushing back saying, we don't want to, MMA isn't really about gradings. But I do think there should be some qualifying system, because you get people who've never had a fight doing IMMAF.
Well, this
and
is sorry, carry on. Did I still?
I know some some debuts could be better than someone who's had 10 fights, but I do think that they should have a bit more of a more strict entry into it. But the other thing for me is the money. It costs a lot, and unless I get have some sponsorship to help me, or a fundraiser or whatever, I'm not going to be able to afford to pay for that myself. So I was looking at doing the Euros. Obviously that's cheaper, Even just the flights and stuff, it's in Italy. So going to Bahrain costs a lot of money. Me and one of the lads at my gym, we were going to be going to the trials in April for Rome. But obviously, with everything, it was called off. So.
Well, this is another part of it as well. Like, what do you actually get in return for going to do the AIMMA? And I don't know, the return on investment for what it is. And on top of that, everything else, it is an interesting one, regards of the matchmaking system. Because what you said there is a really interesting point of matchmaking in general. Because the whole point of grading is much like jiu-jitsu and other sort of traditional martial arts. The belts are good for grading for competitions. So if you have an MMA matchup, this is where it always gets so tricky. That's where you get mismatches from. You get Joe Bloggs, who's 0-0, but he's been doing, I don't know, Taekwondo since he could walk. But you also get Journeyman John, who's, I don't know. I like the alliteration, so he's 4-4, he's all right.
We all know a Journeyman John.
It's good, isn't it? So you think, okay, he'll be a good entry fight, and he ends up getting absolutely schooled. Or you get, people like, I don't know, Dominant Danny's like 20-0. And should he really be in the same competition as, Journeyman John?
We're talking about, like, in AIMMA, we're talking about, like, Mokev versus the entire division.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, but I didn't want to mispronounce his name and offend him and him beat me up.
Yeah, I do feel like, as far as experience goes, like, what is mad to me, like, I'm not, like, fair play, if if you're doing your thing, do your thing, but he only went to the adult division, like, the last competition. Like, he was 19-0, but in, like, the junior division, which I just find is crazy. I mean, I know when he's had fights on fight shows, he has fought adults and stuff, but I just think you're going in and you're just dropping kids on their heads. Like,
the thing with that is, I'm going to say with anything like this, if he's playing the rules, he can keep going.
This is what I mean.
Unless they change the rules, crack on, beat those kids up, get your record up. Unless anyone's going to stop you doing it, crack on.
This is what I mean, but I do, as much as it's great for him,
that's a soundbite.
He's building himself a great rep. He is an outstanding athlete. These people are flying all the way to Bahrain, and they've had like 2 fights. They're relatively good, but they're coming up against him, and they don't.
Ugh, imagine that. Like, you're doing well at your gym, you're beating other sort of people your own age, smashing the junior comps, and you get him in your first match, you'd be like, okay, it's going to be a long day in Bahrain.
Yeah. I would like to do IMMA. I think it's also a good opportunity to fight people on an international level, because as much as it's great fighting people from the UK all the time, other countries excel in different areas, generalization, like the Americans or the like Eastern Europeans, they're good at wrestling. Again, I'm generalizing, and often people in the UK we're good at boxing and striking. So
you haven't seen my striking.
There's not necessarily. I think there's a topic that gets brought up to me by some of my coaches a lot, is making sure you're preparing for international level, because you might think your wrestling's great, but you're fighting people in the UK, and then what happens when you go to professional level and you're fighting Americans, every few months, and they've been doing college wrestling their whole life. Like, you have to prepare for the international level of skill, and I think IMMAF does give you a bit of a taste for that.
So it's an interesting sort of transition. In the meantime, between going pro, do you plan on doing any sort of competitions in like jiu-jitsu or kickboxing again, just to top up your experience before making that leap?
I haven't. I know that I want to take a break between amateur and pro. I know that I probably want to take. When I say a break, like a break to me is like a few months, because I like fighting like every month. But no, I want to take at least like 4 to 6 months and build on my skills. when you're amateur and you're fighting all the time, you're building your skills, but when you're on fight camps and things, you do have to tailor your training a little bit towards your fight, so it's harder to work every area of your game. So I do want to take maybe 4 to 6 months and work everything. I would like to do a few, competitions, some wrestling stuff, some grappling comps, that I don't usually get as much time to focus on.
With regards to your current camps and everything else you're doing now, who programs and does your matchmaking? So say the Lexi fight, for example, you get offered that, and then what? Who does your camps? Is it you mainly? Is it anyone in particular who gives you more input?
So I have quite a lot of different coaches. Obviously, I work with some more closely than others. God, where to start? So most of my schedule, I've kind of built over trial and error. It also depends on what type of fight I want to have. So, for example, this is quite an interesting one. So when I fought for my title, we'd planned to wrestle, and I didn't want to cut a lot of weight because I knew I wanted to be a bit heavier in that fight because I wanted to wrestle. Danielle's got good striking, and in my opinion, it's not always about taking the fight to my best area. It's about taking them to their worst, the place where I'm going to win the fight the easiest. So we planned to wrestle. Obviously, my striking I'm always confident in, but I'd done quite a bit of wrestling, and I hadn't tried to get my weight super low because I knew I wanted to have good control and have a lot of weight in my favour. And then when we actually got into the fight, I had one of my cornermen. He does my game planning with me, so Ash Begg, my striking coach, he'll help. he helps. To be honest, he helps a lot of the lads, all levels, like UFC, Bellator, Cage Warriors, all the lads with their game planning. And I remember coming out after the first round, and we just both looked at each other and we were like, "Yeah, scrap the whole plan." And we completely changed the plan. I decided I was going to stay on my feet. Thankfully, my tank lasted because I was heavy. That's all I thought. I thought, oh my God, I'm heavy and I'm going to have to strike for potentially like 5 rounds. But no, I managed and I won on the stand up. But yeah, I prepare for each fight differently. Originally, I was supposed to fight someone else for that fight, and I'd been really working on my boxing, because the girl I was supposed to fight, like, I rated her boxing, and then it all changed. But no, for the Lexi fight, I knew I was going to strike. I knew the thing I was most disappointed about after that fight is I knew exactly what she was going to do, and she did exactly what I thought she was going to do. I've got a lot of respect for her, but I find that her style isn't the most entertaining. But if it's going to win you fights, that's great. But me personally, people don't ask me to come on their show because they think I'm going to win. They ask me to come on their show because they know I'm going to be entertaining. And I do. People ask me to come on their show. I don't really have to try to get matchups because, I've got any options really. But she I knew she was going to pin me against the fence and not really do anything, and that's what she did. But we worked a lot my movement, and it really showed. I actually only did pads because I knew she was going to wrestle me. I was focusing quite a bit on my wrestling. I actually only did pads twice in my whole last camp.
Really?
Yeah, obviously we do like drills, we do like Dutch drills and stuff, but I actually only hit pads like twice. And just I looked at my performance and I thought that, it's crazy because my striking was so good. Like my movement was good. I was moving out of the way of shots. I was landing. I was setting up combos. But yeah, I made mistakes. That's just how it is. But yeah, I always prepare for each fight differently, and I'll change things in my camp if something didn't work last time, and I'll add things in, and it all depends also on the fight I want to fight. If I want to fight a cardio fight, I'll be running and trying to get my weight right down.
It is interesting what you're saying about your striking. The fact it's almost you didn't burn out on it, because I feel like if you work so much on your striking, you then put your pressure on yourself to then use it and then perform to a certain standard. Whereas if it's in your locker and it's not the priority, it just seems a lot more natural almost.
Yeah, to be honest, striking's always come really natural to me. I don't really, and something I find really helpful is when I'm fighting, I can think completely clearly, and I can make decisions whilst I'm in there. So if I, a lot of people, especially amateurs, if something's going wrong, they're not able to make the decision whilst they're fighting, that they should probably stop doing that. But I think just experience as well. I'm able, even whilst I'm fighting, to make decisions and still be conscious with myself and thinking and setting things up. Yeah, I was gutted in my last fight, because because I'd been drilling my Showtime kick and I just
that would have been something spectacular.
I was so gutted because it's I'll have to do it in my another fight, but it's really good and I really wanted to land it, but I always like to do something interesting because that's what people like to see. But yeah, I just had to not try and get held onto.
Okay, where do we go from there? that in itself is like it's like a Tinder bio. I don't want to get held on to. Stay away.
No one's holding me down.
That's it. That's kind of... okay, back to the task at hand. Podcast and fight stuff and not laughing at immature jokes. Let's go back to where we were. So regards to when you're actually in the change rooms before a fight, is there any sort of things you go through to try and get yourself in that headspace? Are you normally just already switched on, or?
It always makes me laugh. If I have someone new in my corner, or somebody in the back room before a fight, that they're always so surprised because I really don't have to get in a zone and I'm not nervous. It's really strange for me. I'm like singing and I'm dancing around. I'm so excited. Like I'm just shouting and I'm going like, the thing is with me, I love fighting. Like, I think there's different types of female fighters, but I just like fighting and I don't care about getting hit and I just like hitting people. So I'm just excited. I know that I've got the opportunity for like 9 minutes or 15 minutes or however long it is to just hurt someone and I'm allowed to just, and I'm excited for it. And yeah, I always like to have someone in my corner who's going to calm me down because I don't need no help getting hyped up. I'm always really excited. So I always need someone in my corner to come in between rounds and go, right, now you need to calm down just for a minute. But I think it's good. I'd rather be that way. I always enjoy all my fights and I enjoy the whole process. Something I thought about recently as well is I heard somebody talking about it on was UFC Embedded or something like that, was having the mentality that this could potentially be your last fight. Like you could have a fight and then the week after you could like lose a leg or something.
Anything can happen,
you don't know that could be your last chance to do the thing that you're most passionate about. So I just enjoy every moment. I'm always smiling. When I walk out, I'm smiling. I just really enjoy the entire experience.
Well, that's so important. It definitely shows through with your fights every time. Most important question of the podcast: where can people find you?
So Instagram, Sophie Luxton MMA. I think my Facebook, I've got a Facebook page. I think it's Sophie Luxton MMA as well, but don't hold me to that. OnlyFans? No.
my only fans taking priority on this. Don't you worry about that.
People will be searching me on there now. No, I'm not on there. No, but that's it. I only do Instagram and Facebook. Instagram's the best one. It's the most fun.
Cool. Links to those will be in the description. Thank you for listening, guys. And this episode has been sponsored by Mauler MMA. Use code FCMMA20 at checkout on maulermma.com for 20% off on all products.